We should be live now.
You are.
We are live. All right, we have the confirmed test. How's it going, guys? You are. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Alrighty, there we go. Gotta put that phone on vibrate. I learned that lesson the last time.
Probably a good call.
Perfect. Yeah, well, and then it turned out everyone was trying to blow your phone up while you're trying to do that, and it's like, wow. All right, guys. So, welcome back to another great episode of Outdoors Obsessions. You are watching the best damn web show. Today we have Josh Sparks and Jared Mills on the screen with 41North Media. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up around whitetail strategies of what their topics are, their strategies, plans. They both hunt both public and private, so we're going to see what kind of deals they do there. Feel free to go ahead and interact, comment down below, and we will make sure that we get it going. Please, by all means, engage with us. So starting there, Jared and Josh, if you guys want, go ahead, and for those who don't know you guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves and who you are.
Yeah, appreciate you having us, Joe. We're always excited to get on, talk a little deer hunting. I'm Jared. I work for 41 North along with Josh. We're both located in Iowa. We've filmed together for we've both been with Midwest Whitetail for a while, obviously, as well. So,
Yep. I'm Josh. I also work, obviously, 41 North, produce Midwest Whitetail. That's really my main job. So I spend a lot of time behind the computer and the camera. So it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And obviously, that's how I crossed paths with Jared. But it's kind of unique. Started out as a viewer of the show back in 2008 as a young kid, and then now we do this today. So
there you go. That's pretty cool. How did you and Jared meet?
I knew you were going to ask that. Well, so how I met Jared, I was actually in college, and I had met I didn't know this at the time, but his wife's cousin was in one of my classes, and I was just talking about hunting, which that's pretty obvious, do that a lot. And he's like, yeah, my cousin's husband does that stuff. I'm like, oh, yeah, what's that? He's like, these guys on a hunting show. And he's like, Jared Mills. I was like, Mills Whitetail? So I got his email and just sent him the sappiest, most disgusting, I'll work for free, whatever you need, man. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like an unofficial internship, I guess.
There you go.
And so that first year, I remember met him at IHOP, and it kind of took off from there. So
can't be bad.
Somehow he's still working for him.
Yeah.
He must be doing something right.
He stuck around this long. John does a really good job for us. He produces a lot of the main stuff that people see with regards to Midwest Whitetail, and Chasing November specifically is Josh's baby. So he does a really good job. He's one of our main producers, and it's been pretty cool to watch him grow as a producer over the past few years.
That's awesome. I would have to honestly say, and not to try to steal any thunder from wherever I met Jared, but like shortly after I met Jared, I became a really huge Midwest Whitetail fan. I mean, your guys' content, your guys' B-roll, the way you play out the story and you can keep it short and sweet is just absolutely freaking epic. And when we decided, see, Outdoors Obsessions wasn't supposed to be a web show. It was a photo gallery of family across the states. And when we decided to actually take it and do with what we're doing now, I was like, I said, I've got a few models that I actually want to model off of, and I'm not trying to sound butt kissy here, but yours was one, Midwest Whitetail was one, and there was quite a few others that I was like, these guys really capture the moment, and let's see if we can't do anything different, and let's see what we can do and what we can learn from everybody else, and that's what we've been trying to do. And I have to say thank you, because you guys really lay down some sweet stuff for us to go, you know what, that's cool. I think I need to try something like that. It's working for these guys and whatnot. And you guys kill some freaking beasts of a deer, man. Jared, like the one that you got there in the background, man. That's your biggest one to date, isn't it?
That's actually the buck I called George Brett that I filmed a number of years ago and chased a number of years ago, and that's actually one that I found dead, so I didn't even kill that deer.
Oh, no.
A pretty cool 2-year chase for that deer, and a lot of cool encounters, and
I'll never forget when we found him. It was just so weird for me because, like I had mentioned, I mean, coming from one day, I was like, every Monday I was watching to see if George Brett was dead. And then by the spring, I was there the day that he found them, and I was just like, this is weird.
No kidding. That's an unfortunate ending, but I mean, at least, there's closure there because you found him, but that's still.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to find him. Found him, I think it was in late February. Is that right, Josh?
Yeah, we were shed hunting.
We were shed season.
Snow on the ground. It was just crazy because we had hunted there. I mean, heck, you killed. Was that the year you killed Fatty? I think from that blind. I mean, we were only 150 yards away from him filming. I mean, it just.
Nice.
My best guess is he died in November, but I really don't know, and I have no idea how he died either. So that's kind of a bummer not knowing. But like you said, it's good to at least have closure and have been the one to find him.
Right. So Tanner Larson says Jared's mobility has proven deadly. One of the reasons I went 100% mobile.
I'll tell you, it's not always fun as a cameraman.
No.
I'm a mobile hunter.
We there's a lot of times where I do a lot of self-filming and whatnot, and now we've gotten to the point where we've added enough people to the show where we can have a designated cameraman for a hunt, and we just rotate as we go, like everybody else does. But I can being a self-filmer and being the hunter, I could definitely agree with that. Being I've filmed very little because it always ends up being that I'm the one with tags left, so I don't film a whole lot. But last year I got pretty greedy and ate the tags. But Brock and Garth, those guys, they're a pretty good duo, and Garth, man, puts it out. He carries out decoy, the camera equipment, oftentimes his bow and his stand. When we're public land stomping, it's you can't just go 150 yards in and call it good. You got to get in there, and we actually got this kind of funny thing going on every day. Whenever during deer season, we track how many miles we walk, and some of us, man, should really be in a lot better shape for how many miles we walk. I'm still wondering why I'm holding on to this beer gut that I got going on. But when it comes down to, all right, so let's talk strategy a little bit. Josh, you hunt a lot more public land, don't you, than you do private?
Yeah, I have the last 2 years for sure.
So I've watched quite a few of your episodes where you go in and you have some great success either at seeing something or
that's all I'm good for, seeing deer.
Yep, actually being able to lay them down. Would you state that? What would you say for those public land guys that are out there? What is your number one strategy? Like the first thing on your cross off list, what do you like to look for before you go stumbling into some public land?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's probably where I'm different than a lot of guys. Every spot that we went to last year, I'd never stepped up there. All of it was 100% solely.
Sorry.
No, you're good. It was solely just looking at maps. I mean,
okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man.
Yes, you may. Did you ask your mom? Probably should do that. Sorry about that. That's my 7-year-old.
No.
She.
It's probably only a matter of time until mine comes beating on my office door. So it's okay.
But just reading maps. I mean, that was getting I used Onyx a lot. Mostly because the places that I was going, Max and I were getting up and driving about an hour each time, no matter where we were going. And the type of if you guys think about that Beanfield spot, you're talking about. So that's where I killed my deer in 2018. That spot you were talking about how you have to go so far. You know what I mean? Get way back in there.
Right.
That's a perfect example. That's so not true sometimes. You know what I mean? Because that spot was right by the parking spot.
Oh, really?
It was such a good spot that I think it was overlooked just because of that mentality. You know what I mean? So that was something that was very interesting because that was kind of what my thought process too.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. I definitely, the farther you got back, the less people I ran into. And that Beanfield spot also got just overran with people.
That got hammered pretty. I mean, that's almost too good of a site to pass up.
On October, so in 2018 when I hunted there, I only hunted. 2018 was a great year. I only hunted twice the entire season and killed 2 deer. It'll never happen again. But that was my first time going to that spot. And then last year when we saw that deer on October 3rd, I mean, basically, like I said, it was just taking the private farms that I'd hunted before and it's all the same strategy. I mean, it's just like if I look at a timber, those all. So when we moved that spot in November, 100% timber. I started applying a lot of the things that I did from the farm that I grew up hunting.
Sure.
So I mean, being able to read a map is the biggest thing because, as you know, public land, the amount of extra time that goes into everything, not being able to take, a vehicle all the way back to certain spots or being able to leave your stands up all year long. There's a lot of factors out of your control.
Right.
So I pretty much just tried to ignore everything that was out of my control and focus on them all. I mean, which sounds bad. I mean, we probably should have scouted a lot more on the ground. But just with the nature of my job, I don't really have that much time to go do that type of stuff.
Right.
This year, spend a lot of time on the computer, and then during the fall, we don't really have super lots of free time, I guess would be the best way.
Sure.
So.
I don't know anyone that actually works and does that has that much time, to be honest. But one thing that I like to do, kind of like with your maps comment there, is we kind of the same thing. I don't know of a public land spot that we've gone to that was less than 30 minutes away. That we hit continuously throughout the year. One thing that we like to do is we look at, like you said, first thing we do is we pull up the maps and we look at the topo. And if we got a spot in mind, I like to look at those valleys that kind of come into a pinch because, one, you got a natural funnel there, but now you need to figure out, okay, are they going to be accessing that funnel there nocturnally, or are they going, or through the night, or are they going to be accessing that in the middle of the day? How are they going to access that? Well, unfortunately, without running the risk of stealing or cameras being stolen, you got to go in there and you got to sacrifice a couple hunts, and I call it earning your tails. You got to get in there and see what kind of deer are coming through and when they're coming through. And unfortunately, sometimes, even though it's the fun of it, it can take almost a full season to really get a spot down before you can say, okay, I know this spot now, and I'm comfortable with saying I can go to that tree or I can go to this bend, and I know for a fact I'm going to see these deer on that day, or this much deer on that day at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I would look for was some sort of funnel or benches in the timber, like with ridge, using that topo map. That was 100%. I guess how I used the map was I would eliminate what I didn't want to go look at.
Sure.
Or what, public piece I did want to go to. I mean, you could eliminate 90% of a place. For me, I mean, again, it was just like the way we were doing it, that goes back to that mobile, strategy. Very rarely do we sit in the same tree, which is something I think I just took from Jared. I mean, no doubt. Because to me, it was always, well, I shouldn't say it's not true. We sat in the same tree, I feel like every time. But especially when you're deeper in the timber, because it's like you had said, you sit, you observe something, deer movement, you move. But it was, generally speaking, always that same pick a spot and just go. I mean, there was never, it wasn't as in depth, I think, as some people think. There's a lot of just go hunt and see what happens. Because, that was one thing is like, didn't really run the cameras because, like you said, they get stolen. I think I lost 3 last year. So I was just like, whatever, I'm not putting any more out here. But that's the thing, like I would argue those places that I was hunting, I felt like I had a better chance at killing a big deer on the public land than I did in some of the private farms I've had permission on the past few years. So
sure.
And I'm not sure what it's like over your guys' way. So do you hunt mostly eastern Iowa? Is that right?
We hunt a lot of eastern and southern Iowa.
Okay.
I go down to Van Buren with some friends of mine.
Yeah.
And then for the most part, when we're out public land stomping, we find ourselves going up north a little bit into the Maquoketa area, which is that Jackson County.
Yeah.
There's a couple really nice public lands up there, and you can. I honestly, there's not like a whole lot of land. I mean, there is a whole lot of land up there, but there's not. You can go into that piece of property and not see the same thing twice. It really is nice, but it doesn't look like that on the map. I mean, it's got a lot of rolling hills up there. The further north you go, just like the further south you go, you get into some hills, man, where you really are testing your physique.
I've got a buddy, he hunts. They do like a week-long rutcation where they just go up and camp, and it's like mountains up there.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't even remotely look like Iowa. And they get in some really cool deer. But I mean, yeah, I mean, public land was a lot of fun. Obviously, it came with so many things out of your control. You'd finally figure out a spot, and everybody has the right to be there, so you can't be mad about it.
Yeah.
But that was just the one thing. Is like you feel like you're finally in the game, and then something happens.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can get over that. It can produce some really good hunting. I mean, kind of going back to cameras back where southeast Iowa. So Mike used to have his farm down there. That's where Mike's main farm was back in 2015. I remember we ran a camera. That's one thing, I guess. I shouldn't say I don't run cameras. I just don't run them to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I like to do is go put them somewhere and let them just like that nobody should be going to and let it soak, because it's just kind of incredible to see how many deer are really there. I mean, I feel like there's a misconception. It's like, oh, public land, I'm never going to kill anything.
Right.
Which
that year on that piece, Josh, how many shooter bucks do you think you got?
Are you talking about southeast Iowa?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it was like well over 10. I mean, it was incredible. And there was one really big deer.
There's some really nice public land spots where you can just, as a hunter and someone that's got the confidence in of saying, that property has to hold X amount of shooter, or what you would consider a shooter deer, because everybody's got their own preference, but I would have to agree that I think there's a shooter buck on. I mean, if you really had to like boil it down, there's at least one shooter buck on every public property.
Every piece of public property, absolutely. And one thing that I found very interesting this past season, for those that saw that 10 point that we were hunting, I was getting a ton of photos of him. It was relatively unpressured. And then we got to the middle of October after that second encounter, and then the place just started really picking up with people. I thought for sure he left. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, we're done, whatever. He got killed right there during shotgun season. So it was just like, it was pretty incredible. It kind of makes you think like you're really just another part of their environment. I mean, I don't think that they're like, oh, there's people on public land deer, I'm leaving. You know what I mean? And once I start, it was just an interesting tidbit, because like we should have just kept hunting.
Right.
I mean, that's all it comes down to. Stupid of me. I mean, we had them right there, and I just got frustrated. I was like, I'm going to go somewhere else. And it worked out. I mean, like I said, that other spot we went to, because the place, they were both huge timbers.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. I mean, that's what, which is very different than what I was hunting like southeast Iowa. That was a lot of fingers and, crop ground. And that's the one thing in Iowa, you guys know, is just like you can find a ton of different types of terrain to hunt public land.
Yeah.
But all those strategies.
What do you think, Jared, I know you primarily hunt for, like you have a farm or two that you hunt that yourself, but do you ever trickle into the public lands anymore?
Yeah, tell us about that, Jared. He thinks it's the easiest thing in the world.
Like 170.
Every time I go with Josh, it's
serious. He's a good luck charm. No, it's not even a joke.
About killed big deer. No, I started. I was hunting public land in Iowa, like 2010, 2011, and I kind of drifted away as I started getting more permission. I really enjoy the extra aspects that come along with hunting private land, not just the home, but the land management. I've really become passionate about that. So that's really my favorite part. I still hunt public when I go out of state, like I've hunted public land, elk hunting in Montana the last couple of years, and stuff like that. But in Iowa, I pretty much focus on the farms that I have permission on, and I share those farms with other people. I don't lease any ground. I don't have any ground that's exclusive to me. I own one farm that I'm a 50% owner of. So everywhere I'm hunting, I'm sharing that with other hunters, but it still is private land. But kind of to your guys' point, the public land in Iowa is phenomenal. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, if someone had the time to scout and hunt it the right way, I mean, you could kill a 150, 160 every single year if you had the time to put in. I mean, Iowa public land is that good. And like Josh said, those big tracts are arguably quite a bit better than some of the smaller private land stuff.
Yeah.
It's the blessing
yeah,
of being in Iowa.
what was that? You're kind of breaking up there, Chief.
I said it's just the blessing of being in Iowa right there.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean,
no,
you can,
no doubt.
what is really cool too is for the most part all around here in eastern Iowa is there's a lot of urban hunting, and I'm sure you guys got some of that up there, but you can get yourself into an urban area, you can see some freak monster deer, which is just
Mm-hmm.
it's almost spoiling. And urban hunting is almost, I don't want to call it high fence hunting, but that's the kind of caliber of deer you can get out of the city because they it depending on your city and how they go by, like here in Davenport and Bettendorf, you got to kill 3 does the previous year before you can get a doe or before you can get a buck for the next year. So if you got your eyes on a buck and it takes you 2 years to get there, he can gain almost 60, 70, 80 inches just in that 1 year, depending on how old he is, depending on the environment he is. And uh, I've seen a lot of freaking nice deer come out of just the suburbs. And these are parcels that are no bigger than 20, 25 acres.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You've got buddies that do some of that urban hunting. I haven't done it personally, but yeah, there's big deer killed in those areas every single year.
yeah. We got Logan Beach. Says certified killers. Who cares if Joe's not paying attention? LOL. And then anyone wanting to see some gnarly footage, check out Jared's recurve turkey hunt in the snow. Sickest footage and hell of a shot. 100% agreed with that. That was phenomenal. And I being as a producer of some sorts of whatever my talent is of doing that, I watch a lot of other people's producing and editing styles. And when you guys made like the time like follow the backpack as he was taking off, I was like, that thing was that little detail right there was amazing. And I actually messaged Jared about that. I was like, dude, that was just freaking sweet. And he goes, that took forever. And I'm like, I can believe it. Where he had the
Um,
time follow
turkey
back.
hunt.
Oh yeah,
That was intense. Dan Buck
Yeah.
says there could be somebody else tree stand 20 yards away from yours, and you might kill a deer, and they have never killed a deer in that spot. That's how public land works.
yeah. No, I mean, to me, I always tried. If there was people there, most of the time it was because there was deer there. I
Right.
mean, that's one thing I learned. Like a lot of those guys have been hunting those big tracks where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
There was people that hunted that their entire life. I mean,
Sure.
and it was pretty incredible. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I won't be hunting as much public land this year, but it was definitely. It was. I think my favorite thing about hunting public was that you're willing to try anything.
Yes.
You have nothing to lose. You can be as aggressive of a hunter as you want, which probably didn't work to my advantage sometimes. But it's just when you have a quote unquote private place, you want to be a lot more cautious, or you don't go certain times. Like taking away that was a lot of fun because we just tried it. I mean, a lot of times it didn't work, but we were definitely in the game. I mean, like I told Jared, of course, I'm the only guy I think on Millis Whitetail last year that didn't kill a deer. So of course I'm going to say it was my best season ever. But it really was because
I didn't kill a single deer last year.
I mean, but yeah, I mean, it was just we saw. I don't even know how many deer that we saw that we would have shot, and for one reason or whatever, it just wouldn't work out. But I mean, we're putting ourselves in the game. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
I would have to agree. Don't get me wrong. Anywhere that you shoot a deer, whether it be private or public, a public land deer, especially you go in there and you've tracked the miles, you've done the research, and you've done it all. You get that same challenging, rewarding feeling just as if you do public, because you put in your food plots, you put in your time. Don't burn this stand. Try going over here this day, tracking his movements and trying to figure out. It's still a hunt, and I would have to say that the feeling the reward of killing a beast off of the public land, or off of private land. You have finally done it, and now you're accomplishing your goals, and that helps me drive for my next year's deer. Like, okay, I did all this and it worked. Is it going to work next year? We don't know. It could be completely, totally different.
Yeah, that's what keeps us coming back every year, and it's the same with anything, even outside of hunting. But the harder you work, the better it feels when it comes together.
Yeah.
It's just that reward is so much sweeter.
What would you have, Jared, for as far as public land tips for guys that are we can make a fine example. I just got permission to hunt really beautiful 40 acres. What would you say going in for your first time in your private land? What would be some of the best tips that you can give somebody to come out successful, as much as successful as possible?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it really isn't all that different than the way you'd scout a new piece of public. You got to learn how the deer use the property. And one thing, you can always start from an aerial map. It always helps to get out there and walk the property depending on the time of year. But one thing, definitely check out the neighborhood. And even from a map standpoint, look at it from a wider standpoint so you can see where the nearby ag fields, where the deer are going to go as for destination food sources. It's all about learning the deer movement and how they're going to use the property. Or in the evenings, are they going to move this direction, or and that's how you learn it. And a lot of times, I've hunted a lot of new farms over the past few years by just losing and gaining permission. And it's always the same process. You just have to learn that stuff. And for me, that's really why I started doing the really mobile hunting, the hanging hunts, is because that's how I learned it. I sit somewhere, whether you want to call it an observation sit or not. I don't take myself completely out of the game, but I sit what I think is a good spot and I adjust, constantly adjust. And sometimes it's small adjustments. Sometimes it's 50 yards in one direction. It just being mobile like that, it's a good way to learn the property. Get in a spot where you can see what the deer are traveling, and not just bucks, does too. I mean, you can learn a lot about the pattern of deer and the direction of movement from just watching the deer herd in general. But that's why I'd say, check out the neighborhoods, try to make guesses on where you think the deer will be feeding in the evenings, which direction they'll be working back in the mornings. Drive the neighborhood in the evenings and kind of get a feel for what caliber of deer are around. And then just make adjustments. Don't be afraid to move around a little bit. Don't get stuck just hanging or sit in the stands that you hung in the summer.
Right.
Be a little mobile, and you'll be able to learn a lot quicker that way.
I would have to agree. Like this year, I'm really giving a saddle a full send. I've played around with it a lot, and the reason why I like the saddle versus my climber more is just because of the weight difference. Because anyone that goes in, and it doesn't matter how far you go in, whether it be 100 yards or 1,000 yards, 4 miles or whatever, that amount of weight that you can shave off going from a complete climber to even just and I'm going to kind of brag up the saddle, but that's going to make or break whether or not you can, let's say, all right, this day I'm going to get back there. Well, you ran into a couple other stoplights that you didn't plan on to, or you got a flat tire, you got pulled over. Well, now you can't make it back as far. Now you got to go with plan B and try to get there. That weight saving can be the make or break if you're going to be able to get back there a little bit faster and quieter or not. But I would agree 100%. I didn't hang one single stand last year, and I was 100% mobile, and I'm glad I did because I got to cover a lot more land than what I normally would have if I would have just hung a stand.
Yeah, and the other big aspect of that, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with private or public land, but the other reason I do it is just because it works. I think there's so much you can get away with if you're not sitting in the same tree. I think deer make adjustments constantly based on what they encounter during the hunting season. It may just be they're taking a different trail because they came across your scent from 2 days ago. Little stuff like that, I think we do more impact, or we have more impact than we think, even if we didn't blow any deer from the stand, or we didn't never got winded from the stand. I think there's a lot of just residual effect that we leave when we're hunting the same tree over and over again. And so if you're hunting a new tree each time in, you have that element of surprise on your side. And I can't tell you how many times that first time in or first sit in a tree has killed a good buck, and that's the reason I keep on doing it.
Well, your series of there was a huge deer that you guys were keeping quiet for a while last year until the neighbor ended up getting that fatal shot on him. But you sat, and didn't you sit like 5 feet up off the ground one point? You could have just touched the bottom of the sand. I mean, hey, don't get me wrong, dude. I'm afraid of heights just as much as you are, but You know, I've
You're
sat.
not afraid of it.
I have not sat. I've sat in some trees where we got Dan and Logan in here still, or even a buddy of mine, Eric. But I've sent them some pictures, and they're like, you can get more than 6 feet up off the ground. I'm like, dude, this is all I need. But I
It's
mean,
true.
it.
If you have the right tree, it doesn't take much. And that obviously that situation was a little bit more just a byproduct of the property itself, and that was really my only option, either hunting the ground or hunting 6 feet off the ground. So
Right.
well, I've killed some deer pretty low to the ground, and to your point, it doesn't take much if you have the right cover.
No.
No,
How high would you say is too high to be sitting in a tree?
you can have
I can't even lie on this one because Josh will call me out.
no.
I don't necessarily get high just to get up there. Like there's certain trees that maybe straighten out way up there, and I know I have to get to that point where it's straight enough to hang two stands, or potentially that's the only cover is 30 feet up. I more often than not I'm in the 20-foot range. But again, I don't just climb to a certain height. I completely go by the cover and where I need to be. Either the cover or the straightness of the tree where I can hang stands.
Sure. Logan brings up a pretty good fact there. He says anything's a long fall for you, Joe, since you're only about 5 foot. I am probably the shortest hunter out there. My wife has a 24-inch draw, which that's really nothing like. Well, she's a female, so. But I have a 25.5-inch draw. It's quite funny because I'm pretty much shooting bolts. You attach a moon knock to my string, and I'll sling a freaking crossbow bolt down there.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
but I still get the job done though, man. Whether or not my guys want to sit there and agree with me, I get the job done.
that's
But
right.
how it? Let's see. So how high have you sat? Like, what's the highest that you think that you've gone?
One stand that comes to mind is a stand I called the skybox stand for good reason.
I
Josh is
never,
like, nope.
Was
never hunted that one. By no means am I afraid of heights,
Right.
but I will say when I first started hunting with Jared, I thought he was insane. I mean, I'm serious. Some of the things that we were doing, and it's always safe. Don't get me wrong. You're always connected into something.
Yeah.
But it definitely, for me, there was always like a misconception. He hit on it really well, but it's like it's not about how high; it's where there's the cover in the tree.
Right.
And that was one thing that was really difficult about public land is that in Iowa, anyway, you can't trim anything, you can't cut anything. So for us to be able to get in some trees, we were hunting a lot of really bare trees because you have to get your camera arm, you have to get the two stands, you have to be able to get up there.
Yeah.
So that definitely won, not necessarily a negative or con, but it definitely changed the way that I hunted. When you're there. Plus, you have to carry 6.6 rather than 4, or So,
Yeah, and to Josh's point, it is all about being safe no matter how high you are. The third reason that you could hunt a little bit higher that I've done before is just to get a little better wind advantage. If you're in an area that you're encountering some swirling winds, getting a little bit higher, above the hill that's in front of you or whatever's causing that swirling wind, can be another reason to hunt a little bit higher. But I don't love hunting really high for sure. I'd rather be lower. I think it's natural to be more comfortable lower to the ground. But
Sure.
I also know that you can't ever find the perfect tree in the perfect spot in Iowa. Everything is just crooked trees, and
Yep.
so sometimes you got to do what you have to do to make it work.
We Brock and I remember he had a piece of property that he had some permission on, and we went out there. It wasn't last season, but it was about 2 years ago. Either way, we get out there. He goes, dude. He goes, you got to hang on. I'll put it in the tree. It's gonna be perfect. And we were right over his food pile. I was like, yeah, I'll come out on opening day, and I'll film you, man. Let's get it done. There was this huge, like, I don't want to guess score, but I mean, he was like this big, and like that tall, but like clubs for bases. But we're sitting there, and I get in. I said, how high is your tree stand? And he looked at me and he goes, it's 30 feet. So we got to get up there. I'm like. This sucks because you're talking about a 5'6" dude, who's not afraid of heights. I'm just afraid of going splat. Okay, and we're climbing up safely too and whatnot. But Brock is like 6 foot, so I'm thinking there real quick as a little guy. It's like, okay, my steps are like here and here. His are like here. Okay, or you're more even like here. So I'm like, dude, tell me you got your sticks. So he goes, oh, dude, we're gonna be great. We're gonna be great. All right, no worries. So we get out there, and I got to the bottom of his platform, and he's got this stick that's got to be shifted just a little bit around the tree. Well, he's got longer legs, so a little bit of a longer shift, not a problem. I couldn't reach it. Couldn't reach the step. And I'm at the base of my stand. I'm like, dude, this is not working at all. It's not working 100%. He goes, are you kidding me? What are you going to do? I'm like, I guess I'm hunting on the ground, bro. I'll film you from the ground. You get up there. He goes, I can get up there. I was like, yeah, whatever. So I climbed back down, and the cool part about this tree was it had like these two roots that came out of it and kind of circled. So it was kind of like a little den. So I hunkered down in there, and I got the camera out, and I'm sitting there, and it's like right before the camera can see really good. I tell from my left, I'm looking over there, and I see two deer walking up, and I'm like looking up, and he's just like, and I'm like, all right, there's deer right there. So I'm like trying to slowly get the camera out, and the one that I'm thinking he's gonna shoot, I look up and he can see her. I'm like, all right, great. He's gonna shoot that doe. I'm looking at her. She's 20 yards. I'm just starting to get the camera up on her, getting ready to hit record, and the deer that was behind her spotted me, and she's like coming up to me, and I'm talking. She got within like 5 feet of me. Well, she's getting closer and closer. Brock doesn't even see this big deer. He sees this doe that's coming up to me. He's like, well, I can't shoot now because now I'm going to shoot my camera guy. And I'm sitting there like, shoot, 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 shoot. And she finally actually sniffed my boot, and she like hopped straight up and out. And yeah, that was the unfortunate event of Joe can't climb up past 30 feet because somebody had to put their stick here as opposed to just here. And there's been a couple trees where I couldn't get into that I wanted to, really get up to a certain spot, kind of like you said, like the best cover is for me right there. I'm like, well, I just can't do it. But using that saddle with the sticks or using my climber where you just go straight up, that works on a lot of trees. But finding a good tree is hard enough, let alone a tree that this little guy can get up into. Yeah. What takes you guys like 3 sticks takes me like 5. I gotta get up there a little bit more.
I think one thing that also adds to the whole picking a tree and how high is just the camera. I mean, that was one thing I never really, before I started filming, appreciated is how much, like, there's a lot of really good spots that, we could have hunted and we didn't because the camera wouldn't be able to see, or you wouldn't be able to get good footage of the deer coming in.
Right.
So that was one thing I just, learning from Jared right away, noticed that there was a lot of dedication to that aspect. So it's just another thing that has to, go through the process as far as tree selection.
Would you guys agree, and this is probably going back a little bit, but would you guys agree that if you ended up hunting the same tree on public land, that it is likely that you could probably see a different buck? Let's say that you hunted it every day in a month, and you burned out that stand pretty good. But would you not agree on public land, or even private land, you could probably see a different buck every day considering the zone that you're in? Let's just go to southern Iowa.
So the spot that we had switched up and hunted in late October, I want to say it was October 25th. We went in, just picked the spot off the map. It was right off the creek, and there's a little opening right next to it. We passed a really good 3-year-old the first night. Saw a really big deer the second morning. So that was the second day in a row we hunted it. And we snorweezed him. He got dumped into the timber, and the closest he got was like 50 yards and just walked the other way down the creek. And then the third day we hunted it again and saw another shooter buck. So absolutely, especially on those big tracks, we hunted it 3 days and saw a different deer, and then for some reason moved. I don't know. That would be an example where it's like I really should not have moved. I think if we would have stayed there, a buck would have, we would have gotten a shot at something. That was just one of those deals where it was like you were limited on where you could go based on, the border of the public. But that was, I absolutely agree. You could see. I think it depends. It's like Jared said, one of the more important things with public land for me is what's around it.
Right.
You know, what's feeding it. You know, because during the rut, they're all running around. You know, different spots. So your chances of seeing a good deer, I think, are limited by what's around it. Obviously, on top of what's there, but that was always a big, you know, factor too.
How many sits do you think, Jared? How many sits do you think that you have in each tree stand before you're considered burned out? Like, how many sits will you sit in a spot before you're like, no, it's burnt? I mean, other than not seeing deer movement, but let's say that you don't see deer movement for 3 days in a spot, is that burned out to you?
There's a lot of factors that go into that. You know, if your wind advantage or your entry and exit is a little bit iffy, the stand's gonna burn out a lot quicker. You know, maybe it's one hunt. If you have bulletproof access both in and out, you have good wind advantage while you're there on stand, you can hunt that stand over and over again and not burn it out. So there's a lot of factors that I would say would go into that to answer your question. And most of the time it's not me moving just because I think this stand is completely burned out. A lot of times, like I said earlier, it's just making adjustments about where I think I need to be. But I have hunted the same tree over and over again, as long as it's a good setup, as long as I can get in and out clean or relatively clean. It's pretty hard to get out perfectly clean all the time because deer just walk around all the time. But if you can have relatively clean hunts, you can hunt that stand a few times for sure.
Dan says rainy days are good days to rehunt stands that you've killed a deer in before. That's something that I could probably agree to. I mean, when it rains, man, it's like, okay, you know what? That's almost a lifesaver because it's now, for the most part, it's washed off a lot of your scent and you can get back in there. And maybe you did something wrong and it was a mature deer and it's messed up, but you're kind of like, if I can do the same thing again, I could probably do it differently and probably land that.
Yeah, for sure. And I've made hunt decisions based on rain coming in. Like if there's rain coming in later that night, I'm more apt to be a little more aggressive, knowing that I'll have a lot of my scent washed away after that hunt. I ran into that a couple of times this past season when I was chasing that big deer. I was more
when you got
on the ground.
When you put them on the ground, didn't it rain? Right?
Yeah, I knew it was an aggressive move, but I also knew I was going to get helped a little bit by that rain coming in. Yeah. I didn't hunt in the rain, but it was forecast to start raining shortly after the hunt.
Was that where you were in the middle of that field and he was starting to come up to you, and you're kind of behind that bush? Is that the hunt that you're talking about? How close was he to you at that point?
He was within 7-8 yards, something like that.
Because, I mean, you could tell it's close on camera, and I know, like, my heart was beating. I was like, he's going to kill him. He's going to kill him. And then he's gone. It's like, all right, this is a little teaser suspense shot. They're going to drop the video tomorrow. I know it. But, I mean, that guy got freaking close.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience for sure. It was just one of those things where almost everything worked to perfection except for the fact that he came out and went left instead of right. Like, I mean, I nailed his bedding area where he was bedding based on previous encounters and trail cam pictures. I mean, everything worked out to perfection. I got into that spot as clean as I possibly could. I went by 2 other bucks. It took me like almost 2 hours to get to that spot walking in that evening. And it was pretty surreal, literally looking up at a deer that big, because I was just hiding behind that tiny little bush.
Wow.
I'll never forget that. That night, Max and I were hunting on a piece of public, didn't have any phone service. So when we got back to the truck, all I had was a message from Jared, and it was a screen grab of him and the big deer, like face to face.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, we were just freaking out, celebrating. We're like, they killed him. And I called him, dude, tell me about it. And he just like, tell you about what?
I'm gonna go home and cry right now. Dude, I can understand being as close to a target deer and unfortunately not being able to pull the trigger. I mean, did you go to full draw on him before he decided to get out, or did you go to?
I went to full draw when he bolted. Just you've seen deer bound off a little bit and stopped to turn and see what it was, because I didn't think he had me pegged. I think he got a little bit of my scent when he ran off. So that was just like a just in case come to full draw, just in case he stops and looks at you for a second, you can shoot. But I pretty much knew I didn't have a chance once he started coming to my right. Obviously, being a right-handed shooter, I was set up to shoot this way, and he came on the opposite side, and not being able to move, there's no way I could spin to draw and shoot that way.
Right. I mean, being, you look at these big deer, you look at chances that you might have messed up, and then you start thinking, maybe if I would have done this, I could have done that. So my question to you would be, do you think if you would have used this strategy where you used on the turkey, where you're in the duck blind and you're laying down on the grass and you kind of came up on it whenever you had the chance, do you think if you would have had something similar to that, you probably would have had a different story? This is probably going to keep you up at night now.
If you knew how many what ifs I had from last season, it would have been tough. That the layout blind turkey hunt, that was just more of a for fun thing, and the grass happened to be low enough that I could at least see the decoys. I think as tall as the grass was, as tall as the beans were, the native grasses and everything, would have been really hard to do that. Even on the turkey hunt, I couldn't really see more than 10 yards, but that's all I needed to see.
Sure.
It would have been really tough not being able to see for that hunt, laying down in the blind or something. I don't really know what I would have done differently on that hunt, to be honest. I thought I did everything right. He might have heard I had to mash down some grass right after I got set up, so that I could shoot out into the field. And I keep going back to thinking that that's what he heard, and he was coming to investigate that sound.
Sure.
I was so close to where he's bedding. I bet I was between 50 and I don't know exactly where he's been, but between 50 and 70 yards of his bed when I set up. So I imagine it's very possible that he heard me mashing down some of that grass, just trying to get my spot set up, because it wasn't 5-10 minutes later and he was coming to me on a string.
Sure.
But he was obviously on high alert.
Do you think that you got in there a little late since it was you said it, you pretty much got just about set up and he was already coming in. Do you think you just got set up a little too late as well, or?
Potentially. It kind of seemed like I got set up right on time. The only reason that I was late is because I literally had to crawl hands and knees past other deer to get to that spot. It took me almost 2 hours, I think, to go 150 yards.
Sure.
In that night. So just agonizingly slow walk in that evening. I think I got out there right on time. It just was one wrong move, I think, at the very end there. Otherwise, it would have been a pretty epic hunt.
I mean, that deer was a stud. I 100% agreed with your moves on that, and I was just like, I learned a lot on that. But like with a deer of that caliber, I can say we went down to southern Iowa, and I had no idea that this deer was around, the one that I got to encounter. But I didn't go to the right stand. We're on private land. I went to the wrong stand. Imagine that. But it ended up working out because I was on my way back. It was really windy, and there's a bedding area between me and the road, and it's literally the last weekend of bow hunting season for the year. And as we were going out, I decided to comb that bedding area since I had the wind to my advantage and I had the noise and everything like that. I didn't see anything, and I ended up kind of climbing up this hill, and I was getting ready to go out on the road to meet up my buddy. He was getting ready to pick me up, and I just happened to look over to the right, and there's these 3 monster deer chasing this doe, and she jumps in from the cornfield and lands in the creek bed that's like 10 feet deep. Well, she ended up snaking around, and I was like, holy smokes, that thing's huge. It was like a 170 class, and I do exaggerate numbers a lot. Just like any other guy, but I'm not kidding. This deer, there's other people that laid eyes on it, and they all agreed with me that this thing was absolutely 170, 180. I don't know how I did it, but I still had my bow obviously knocked. I still had an arrow obviously knocked, but I dropped my backpack, pulled out my grunt tube, and I hit a grunt. And in between the wind, that deer, the biggest one, he was the dumb one. He was the one that decided, I'm going to go investigate that. And he brought those 2 other guys, and I was like, holy smokes, this happened. I just went to full draw in the middle of the timber, hit my knees, and there he is at 25 yards, and all 5 of my pins sat inside his chest cavity. And my heart's beating a million miles an hour. The camera's not on, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then all right, there's the shot. I'm going to take it. I'm going to do it. And there's a freaking tree on my way. So I'm like trying to lean back. I'm trying to lean forward. Can't do it. And then this doe who apparently didn't want to be chased in the beginning throws out a doe bleat 100 yards over this way. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And all three of those deer took off like, teenage boys, gone. And I was like, all right, I'm going to come back in here. And unfortunately, I did end up going back in there. If you guys go back to one of our episodes where it says Joe's season, Iowa Giant, you see the smaller one of the, well, there was three of them, and he was probably about the middle one. They're both pretty close. He was about the 150, 160, but he was still in the area, and he ended up coming in, and a little buck ended up stomping at me, and I shot as he stomped, and the buck that I was shooting at ended up ducking, and I don't recommend throwing the little fit that I threw whenever that. I like kind of like smack the camera, but being so close to a deer in a stand is one thing, but being so close to a deer on the ground is a whole other part. I mean, I've never been that close to a deer on the ground, that I was trying to shoot. Most of mine have been up in the tree stand, but I had this guy at 25 yards, man, and I was shaking like a, cat in a Christmas tree. I don't know how you kept your composure, man, because that was a hard stance to be in. You're on your knees and you're kind of like doing this or whatever, and you're trying to hold your bow. That's a hard hunt.
Yeah, it's being on the ground. It's definitely a lot different. I think there's advantages to it, but the biggest thing I hate is not having the visibility.
Yeah.
That's tough. You wonder the whole time you're sitting there. You wonder what you're missing. You wonder what you can't see, and that was probably the toughest thing for me last year, getting into hunting from the ground a little more. Was just not having the visibility that you're used to having.
Yeah. David says, Jared, any tricks on getting up steep washout banks from a boat, canoe? One of those have to get out to this spot situation modified any ladder stands before or rope ladder type things.
Yeah, I've seen guys use. Obviously, it needs to be a spot that you're going to go to a lot. If it's like a spot you're just going in one time, it's a little bit harder. But if you can set up a rope, I've even seen guys try to cut steps into the bank so that you have something to go up, almost like steps. But having the rope for support would be helpful. But I guess that'd be the only two things I could think of. Maybe even a ladder. This wasn't necessarily climbing up a steep bank, but one of our buddies had a kind of cool system for crossing a bank where he had a log that laid over and they put almost like ladder steps across it. You could maybe do the same thing vertically as he did for crossing the creek.
There you go. Yeah, Chris says David tie a rope to a tree in advance to climb up with maybe.
Yeah, that's good.
But we've learned up some hills going up north. Those hills, man, can screw you over because if you're not thinking about your topo just right or you don't pay attention to your topo just right, you're looking at anywhere from an extra 30 minutes to an hour and a half just to try to get around that or to get up it, and that could be the make or break of your of your hunting day. You might see some deer, but you might not be seeing the deer that you're hoping to see, and you might have missed them, and they're gone for the rest of the night or even the rest of the week. Because especially hunting just your standard season, you guys can agree where this deer is over here, and it seems like he's over here on every third Thursday of the month. And well, whenever we get closer and closer to rut, you're going to lose that window.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing to David's question, on a spot that I'm hunting this season, there's a spot, very similar situation where it's a very steep incline. What we're going to do is we're just going to take a big post, drive it in on the top of the bank, and then drop down a big, thick rope. So, I mean, I saw the guy who was talking about potentially putting it around a tree. Mm-hmm. Our idea is we're going to take a post in and just have something to kind of spin it up with.
Chris says, what satellite imaging program do you guys use the most up-to-date images? I found it hard because the spot I scouted on maps changed completely when I walked it due to clear-cutting type activity.
Yeah, that was rough. I usually use a combination of them and just try to see which ones match up. Sometimes we'll even fly the drone. Once you're somewhere near the property, you'll get a pretty cool perspective if you have access to a drone. I use a combination of Google Earth, Onyx and Base Map are probably the three that I use the most when I'm trying to do something mobile. You know, for some of our actual farms that we hunt year after year, we use the Huntero maps. But you know, for mobile maps, those are probably the three that I use the most. Josh, you might use something different.
Yeah, no, I used Onyx and Base Map, and the main reason was just to make sure you just it's weird, but there's different boundaries. I mean, on those mapping applications. The other thing I use is it's Google Earth, but for people in Iowa, you can get an overlay put onto your Google Earth from the Iowa DNR website. So I use that a lot myself. So
With
basically, you just download. What is that?
with the boundaries, right? With
Yeah.
the boundaries, yeah.
Yeah. So that was another.
The other mapping one that I use is the assessor's website. Actually, a lot of times that provides, or at least for my area, it provides fall imagery rather than the green summer aerial. So you know, maybe think about that as another option. It's fairly up to date. I think it's just as up to date as the other ones, but for some reason, it's got more fall imagery than the summer imagery.
I would have to say that's really, really important because what your deer are doing today are not doing later in the year. They change all the time.
Yeah, and you can just see a lot more. You can see, if you're not using a topo map, that fall imagery provides a lot more visibility on things like ditches and roofs and things like that.
Dennis Bland says small diameter rope with a lightweight grapple hook. For myself, I don't like to have a setup that says someone likes to visit this spot regularly. Speaking of public land, Michael Moore says, "What conditions are you looking for to make your decision to push into your best spots on your farm that you might only hunt a few times a year?"
Barometric. I mean, for me, I was gonna say for like that spot where we're going after that big deer on public land, it was wind direction, but more importantly, just accompanying by a cold front. I mean, I know we talk about that over and over and over, but rising barometric pressure days, I mean, it was just, you could see it like in Iowa, you know, that's the cool thing. We've got so many different guys that hunt for the staff of Midwest Whitetail, but I remember October 3rd, almost everybody saw a good deer. We had another cold front October 12th, I want to say. That's, you guys saw TNT that night. We saw that Big Ten again. I mean, rising barometric pressure accompanied by a cold front or north wind. That's what I'm always looking for to, you know, decide to go into my best spot per se.
Yeah, cold fronts are hard to beat, specifically October cold fronts, and it kind of depends too on the hunting situation. So if you're, I don't know if he's asking about public land or private land or targeting specific deer, but trail cam intel is another big one that drives decisions for me. I'll make sure the trail cameras are showing something worth going in, and on the flip side of that, that the trail cams are showing something I need to take advantage of, no matter if there's a cold front or not. You know, throwing the weather out the window, the trail camera is telling me something. I'm gonna go by that first and foremost.
Absolutely. Well, I've learned a lot from this, just that alone. Um, it is 7:44, so we're up to about our hour into the video cast. If anybody else has questions, go ahead and drop them down right now for these guys. Jared and Josh, it was an absolute honor for you guys to be on the screen with us. This is a new series that we started out, and I really do appreciate you guys coming on. It was an honor to have you guys here. It really was, and I hope you guys had just as much fun as we did. Sorry Brock couldn't be with us today. He got called into work for night shift, so.
Yeah, all good. We appreciate the opportunity. It was a good time, and like I said earlier, feel free to invite us again. We'd be happy to join.
Do you guys, before we go, do you guys have any questions or do you have anything else to say to our viewers as far as for this season or anything?
Well, first of all, appreciate you guys chiming in the questions, and those of you who listened in, we appreciate that. And best of luck. Get out there and just make sure you have fun.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Logan Beach says, "Best of luck this season, boys." I'm just going to try to real quick here scroll through some comments that we may or may not have missed. Logan says, "Best of luck this season, boys." Brock says, "What's up, guys?" Chris Mose, what's with that itty bitty 25-inch draw? Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. Dan Joe is 2 feet off the ground. Yeah, that's truth. To learn from these guys, straight killers from Bryant Lyon. And then, let's see here. Good luck, you guys. Thanks for coming. That's from Chris. Yeah, so this was awesome. I hope we can do it again. Brock says, what is your approach to hunting public land?
Like I talked about, I guess earlier, and when we were discussing it, but my biggest thing that kind of changed over time for me was just to not hunt safely, or excuse me, to not hunt aggressively. That's what I say. Always hunt safely, but there was never, we were talking about what conditions. If we thought we had a good chance, we just went in. We never really waited based on weather. We didn't wait based on do we think people are going to be there. It's really just hunt when you can. And I think if you can do the mobile setup, you're going to have a lot more success. That's, to me, the biggest thing is that if you were going to go set up one stand and just leave it there and then hope that that's the spot, I think that you're going to, because I know a lot of my friends that hunt that way when they're on, the public land back home, they'd go hang a ladder stand and that was it. They put all their chips into that one spot. So have a lot of options. That was the other thing for me, was just scouting multiple tracks using the maps. Because with one spot, experience more pressure. Because that was one thing for me, getting to hunt during the week a lot. That's, weekends are a tough time when you're on public. That's going to be when most of your people are out. November, and then the other thing that I didn't mention it earlier, but hunt in October. To me, if I had one piece of advice for a guy who's going to draw a tag and hunt Iowa, if you can, come in October, because it's essentially like you're a private landowner.
Yeah. Got a
Especially
lot
those
of
first
people out there.
few
It's getting
weeks.
hot, or it's kind of like, or it's
Well,
kind of like
everybody's
breaking
taking
in.
on vacation in November. I mean, that's the one thing. Like, I think your best chance to kill a buck is going to be in October. I'm not saying the rut's not the same on public, but I think you do run into that other people factor a lot more.
Sure.
For sure.
If you guys have time, Tom Foster is asking Josh Sparks, what is your mobile setup?
For me, I ran just all lone wolves last year. I mean, it's tough for me to say that there's a better stand out there, and the lightweight factor is really important. I want to say we took, depending on the spot, but we would usually take 6 sticks, and we weren't necessarily always using them to get 6-stick high. We would use them for hooks for, a bow or hanging on a bag, because you can't screw anything in the trees or cut them. But just I've never messed with the saddle thing. I don't know why. You make great points if it's really light,
It
and
is.
we probably should give it a go. But that was just it. I mean, it got to the point where, Max and I had a system down where we could be up in a tree in less than, I don't know, 7 minutes. Both things on, ready to go. So that was just what I used. Obviously, we've used Muddy in the past. But I think the biggest thing about a mobile setup is packing it as, organized as possible, so you don't have things clanking around, which I was not always good at. I always just go.
Gear ties really help out with that. I mean,
Yeah.
they've saved. I mean, gear ties is probably the number one cheapest, underrated tool that you can use in your hunting setup, especially when it comes down to mobile. Because like my climber, there's gear ties all over that thing, and I actually ended up having to color coordinate them just so I can stop undoing the one that I didn't want to undo yet.
Yep.
But, um, but yeah, so hopefully that answers your question there, Tom. If Josh and Jared, if you guys have anything else to say. Otherwise, dude, it was a true honor, man. And, again, not trying to be butt kissy, but I mean, Jared, honestly, 100%, biggest idol in the hunting industry. You are, my man. I like anytime Jared Mills video comes across, I'm like, dude, gotta go home, gotta watch that right now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I'll watch it while I eat dinner. It's just the stuff that you guys can produce is just absolutely sick.
Well, thanks, man. I definitely appreciate that. It's always cool to get to interact with people and do stuff like this. You know, I said this the other day to a couple of guys, but we're kind of in our own little world. We're just hunting and filming, just having a good time. But it's cool to get to talk to people that watch it and get feedback like that. So I definitely appreciate you following along and all the positive comments.
So hopefully one day here in the future we can all get together and do some hunting together, and we'll do a little collab hunt or something like that, or something. That'd be pretty cool. So
Yeah,
You could overthrow Jared for Doe Fest. Make sure you supply the farm, and you're not going to go to the good spot.
good luck.
Well, guys and gals, that is the show today. That is on the screen with Jared and Josh Sparks. We appreciate you guys watching. You are watching the Best Damn Web Show, 41 North. Make sure you guys go over to their YouTube channel. Make sure you head on over to their Facebook page. Check them out this year. If you guys don't know who you are, you guys are sleeping on a rock, check this video, get it done, and appreciate you guys, and take care. And
That's pretty slick.
all right, perfect.
I wish